Chapter 16. Crouching down behind hedges and climbing over tall bushes and a fence and ducking security, I made my way to where Thomas was parked. Running and jumping into the front seat, Thomas turned to me with a sour look. "You can't sit up here. I'm officially working, Dakota. Then get unofficial and get me out of this place." He raced off down the paved road, and when we were clear and away from the mansion, Thomas glanced my way. "What the fuck was that?" "Since when do you talk like me, Thomas?" "Since I met you, and what makes me any different? I use curse words too when I'm upset, and you have me upset. You have managed to place me in the middle of a war between vampires." I cut my eyes in his direction, and yes, I said it. I found newspaper clippings from Mumbai. No one wanted to admit that there were indeed vampires in India. But we have them also. It was their main hunting grounds, with all the poor and weak on the streets. They would sell their blood and then let that doctor, Morgan Mieris, use their bodies. And when you mentioned Ashton Mieris, I knew he was his brother. Thomas paused to calm down, breathing deeply. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, and his face turned to me with eyes large with fright. His hands were clutching the steering wheel, as if he was having quiet hysterics. "Because I didn't expect to be this shit deep in a vampire feud. It can't be good for us. And especially you. Why would they want to fight over me?" "It's the age-old question, and there's only one answer. You're a female and you're human. They prize human females to impregnate, where they can bring a different kind of vampire into the world. Those who can walk during the day. And one brother hates the other, and wants to make him pay for something unknown to us. If my guess is correct, Morgan is the ruthless one." Well, that makes me feel better. But not that much better, I thought. I wouldn't be so happy just yet. Ashton is a blood-sucking demon like his brother, and the minute he gets the chance, he will convert you into one of those walking dead. You've been watching too much television, Thomas. I need you to help me find Paige. Keep your opinions to yourself. I'm doing no such thing. I came to the US for peace, and since I've known you I've had none, and now you have awakened all the old nightmares I have had to endure in India. Hoping I could live to be old, and not have to die at the hands of those vampire brothers. The more I get close to you, the less likely I am to live. He turned and pulled out into the morning traffic. Don't be afraid, Thomas. I'll protect you. I didn't know where that came from, but it was as if something came over me. A type of strength and declaration of my own power. How can you help me? You can't help yourself. I don't need that from you now. Can't you be positive? He glanced at me for a second and sucked his teeth. I know who the evil one is, and it's Morgan Mieris. I turned to him as he looked away from the slick, rainy road. I'm going to kill that vampire. How do you expect to do that, Miss Vampire Killer? He said with a voice laced with mocking humor. Before I can do anything, I have to find Paige. I know she needs me. I can't leave her out there alone. I don't know Paige, and I don't want to risk my life looking for your friend. She should have known better than to cohabitate with those kinds of people. I mean demons. Looking at Thomas as he described the vampires, I knew he was afraid. Extremely afraid. He gripped the steering wheel with both hands, as if he expected the car to careen down an embankment any moment. I should have been, but I thought Ashton wouldn't let anything happen to my friends and me. Drop me by the hospital where she works, I said to him. It's that large hospital on Main Street in the downtown area. I know that one. You mean Morgan is the head of that hospital? I've heard stories about it. People get into my cab and say they wouldn't go there, unless they were trying to commit suicide. I took it as being afraid of doctors. Thomas rambled on, and then glanced over to me as he neared the turn to the hospital. What makes you think she's there? It was something Ashton said about Morgan, and something Paige mentioned. I think Morgan could be holding her captive in his hospital. He hides his victims in morgues, and his victims are young women who come from dysfunctional homes. That fits Paige. Many of them runaways, I said, going over what I remembered. I turned to look at Thomas. The drive took 15 minutes from the time Thomas picked me up outside of Morgan's mansion. He stopped in front of the hospital. I hopped out and leaned into the lowered window in the passenger's seat. Don't go anywhere and park over there. I pointed to the roadway leading to outside parking. This early in the morning, the parking lot was empty. Only the emergency ward would be partially full. Where do I have to go? It's my day off and you've interfered with my love life, and I have nothing better to do and on empty. No gas, Thomas said with a touch of nervousness and sarcasm in his voice. He looked around, and in the side mirrors and rearview mirror as if he thought someone would jump into the car from out the shadows. I didn't want to tell him he wouldn't see the vampires or hear them coming. Strolling into the hospital and looking around, I walked up to the nurse's station. Because it was early in the morning, 3 or 4 a.m., the nurse on duty was half asleep or not used to the night hours. Looking down, she quickly raised her head as I approached. I'm looking for Paige Hamilton. Is she a patient? I glanced at the name of the nurse. Paige had mentioned a woman in her late 20s. Most of the nurses weren't old. That was something that alarmed me, but not at that moment. I had to find Paige. Of course not. She works here. Look at the duty log. The nurse strolled to her computer, and I saw her looking at me and then the computer screen. Yes, I see where she's on vacation. How could she be on vacation? I'm her roommate, she would have said something to me. Does she tell you everything? Did she tell you she was dating Dr. Morgan Mieres? Her voice was confrontational. And how do you know that? I said, looking into her dead gray eyes. There is little that doesn't make it pass through the nurse's station without me knowing. By the look in her eyes, there was jealousy and danger written on her smooth forehead, pale skin, and the way she twisted her mouth. Look, I don't have time to waste. Can I see her office? You aren't allowed to see anything. This is a private hospital, and unless Dr. Mieres okes it, you're out of luck. My eyes turned to the side, watching a figure emerge from the dark, and he stood behind the nurse. Another tall, lean, pale young man. It's okay. Dakota can see Paige's office. Another one stepped out of the shadows. This place is filled with them. But I recognized the voice. At that moment, I thought about my vampire kit that had lain in my closet full of dust. I didn't bother to look at it, because when would I ever need something to kill vampires? Because conventional wisdom said that vampires don't exist. That's because humans had never seen a vampire, and if they had, they wouldn't have known what one looked like, but I had seen them, and I had fallen in love with one, and now I wanted to kill one, and preferably the one standing before me. I don't think I want the tour. I'll come back tomorrow when she's around, I said to Morgan. He smiled at me in a sexy, mocking way, showing his perfect white teeth as he extended his incisors slightly over his bottom lip. But didn't my nurses tell you that she's on vacation? I took her to my summer home. You have a summer home? I couldn't tell by the look of your skin. He put his arm around my shoulder and turned me around, facing the dim-lit hallway that led to Paige's office. Once he had me away from Nurse Dredd and her assistant, he stopped smiling. Come with me, young woman, and he pushed me into Paige's office. Then he stood in front of me, slanting his head and smiling. I can see why my brother is taken with you. You smell delicious, he said as if he had taken a whiff of his favorite dessert. It must be my perfume. I'm wearing lilacs. He lost his smile, which made him look like any attractive, desirable man. But once he dropped the smile, his true nature showed through. His eyes telegraphed that he was dead serious. Paige is with me now. You can go about your business and forget her. I had my back to Paige's desk and my hands on it. My heart was racing because I saw something in his eyes that I didn't see in Ashton's. Someone who could kill me without thinking about it. Usually, I wouldn't shy away from an argument, but these weren't normal times, and he wasn't an ordinary man. You could list him under serial killer. And they have no preferences when it comes to women or men. And this one was the most dangerous of killers. He couldn't be killed in a normal way. If I get out of this, I will carry my vampire kit with me, I promised myself. What happened to Ashton? I thought you would ask about him sooner. But young women are fickle. But then you are the one I have to thank for saving him. That was quick thinking. Calling the police. I would have cut his head off in seconds, but then I would have to kill every human in the house and all those policemen. Then, I would have to answer to my covenant. Not about Ashton, but about the slaughter of humans who could call attention to us. Why are you telling me this? Because you won't be around when Ashton wakes tomorrow night. Where am I going? I asked, not wanting to know the answer. With me? You have but one choice. You have to submit to me and come with me, or you can die with that brother of mine. But you will be mine no matter what. I can leave you human and have you as my host when I want sweet blood, or you can become one of my concubines, as will become the fate of your dear friend Paige. He glared at me, smiling as if he was looking at a big juicy steak and ready to take a bite of it. I trembled and moved away from him, and like a cat he crept slowly in my direction, and I put my hand on a pencil. No one has pencils anymore. No one but Paige. Gripping the pencil in my hand, I waited until he was facing me with his fangs extended. What is your answer? Will you come with me willingly? Or will you force me to? This is my answer. I raised the pencil, and trying for his heart would have been a mistake, because I didn't know if the pencil was long enough and hard enough to penetrate it. I brought it down with a quick stroke and ran. I heard his scream, and I knew I had done some damage to his body, if not his ego. I ran past the nurse, who headed in my direction, and didn't stop me. I scuttled through the doors, and past the cameras in the security room, and out the door. I stood breathless, looking around for Thomas. Where the fuck are you, Thomas? And when I looked to my left, he was coming up the driveway. He stopped and I jumped in. Drive, Thomas. Drive like your life depends on it. Take me to Memorial Hospital. Another hospital? I had been too frightened to say anything because I didn't want to alarm Thomas, because he could react in too many ways, from kicking me out of the car or running and hiding. I didn't want to take any chances. That's the only place I'm safe for now. Thomas drove into the traffic fast. It was a good thing there were few cars at that time of the morning. We got to Ashton's hospital, and as Thomas came to a stop, I said, "Wait for me." Who's going to pick up this tab? A car takes gas. Turning back and walking fast, I said, "Dr. Mieres. He's good for it." When I headed for the lab and to see Ashton, one of the nurses stopped me. Where are you going? I have to see Ashton. That's Dr. Mieres to you. I don't give a fuck, I said, clattering down the hall with her following me. She raised her eyebrow. I told him not to hire you. You're trouble, and you're not what you claim to be. Pushing her aside, I said, "Who is?" You certainly aren't. And I dashed in the direction of the lab and opened the door to his office. When I turned around, the nurse stood with her hands crossed behind her, blocking the door. Where is he? He's home and he's ill. He won't be coming here tonight. I shoved her aside once more and hurried to the entrance of the hospital and to Thomas's car. Hopping in, I closed the door. We have to go. I was breathing hard from all the gymnastics. I was just getting something to eat. You can't be running around with nothing in your stomach. And you haven't slept. I know because I haven't. Just take me to Ashton's apartment and you can go home. I'll get something there to eat. Okay. But I hope you know what you're doing, Dakota. If something happens to you, I'm not coming to the rescue. I hoped he didn't mean that. It's important that I locate Paige. She would expect her friend to help save her life. And I'm her friend like you're my friend. Are we now? I thought we had a business arrangement. I glanced at him. Those are your words, not mine, he said with a shrug. We're almost there. Keep your phone by your side when you sleep. One more thing I need you to do. He glanced at me with narrow eyes. This should be easy. Go to my apartment and get a leather-bound satchel out of the closet. It's on the top shelf. I dropped the key on the seat next to him. What else? How much more do I have to do? When that vampire discovers that I'm helping you, he will kill me. Or I will be his slave. Think of it like this: you will never grow old. You will always be that handsome man, and have an insatiable appetite for sex. That's only in the movies, Thomas said, looking down at the instrument panel. Dakota, I have to have some money for gas. I can't go on like this. He stopped at the apartment building, and I reached into my purse and pulled out $20 and gave it to him before I rushed out of the cab. It was all I had. Thomas glared at me, but he didn't say a word. Then he creased his forehead when he opened the crumpled $20 bill and said, "This isn't India." And he headed north to the service station we passed earlier. Chapter 17. When I climbed out of Thomas's cab and rushed into Ashton's apartment building, sweat dripped down my forehead and into my eyes as I tried to calm and breath regular. Then I realized what had occurred. I had plunged a pencil into Morgan's chest, and I hoped it pierced his heart. Jogging past security and to the elevators with a guard running behind me, I managed to get into an elevator and zoom up to the penthouse. I probably wouldn't have been able to hijack the elevator if the building and apartment had more than one owner, and I hadn't been introduced to security the other day. They probably chased me to make sure I signed in. Stepping out of the elevator breathless, I came face to face with Ashton's servant. I have to see Ashton. Do you know who I am? Yes, I'm acquainted with you, Ms. Bain. You were here recently, and Mr. Mieres spoke of you. He never talks of women, but he spoke of you, and that means something. I didn't know what it meant. It could have meant many things, but I was yet to discover why other than he was as enamored with me as I had been with him. Right now, at this minute, I didn't know how I felt about any of this. My emotions were teetering between love and hate, but never indifference. Where is Ashton? I'm not at liberty to say. Can you tell me if he's all right? When I left him, he was in a battle for his life. His eyes lit up as if he weren't aware that I knew Ashton's secret. I know what he is. I know he's a vampire. That's all I know and what I've heard in books. I don't know anything else. Some of the stories are true. Daylight is breaking, and Dr. Mieres is in his chambers now. He walked away from me. Do you need something? I could use a shower and something to eat. He directed me to the room I had slept in before, and I stripped down and climbed into the shower. This time I found the clothing Ashton had provided for me, and I was relieved to have them. After a long shower, I fell across the bed, and for the first time since I left my parents' home, I felt safe. As safe as one can be, sleeping in a vampire's bed with one nearby. Maybe hours had passed, and I didn't know how long I had been lying across the bed. My eyes were not yet opened when I felt a presence. You look beautiful sleeping there. Moving around the large bed, startled and with my eyes, I said, "Are you all right?" I put my hand to my mouth. He stepped forward, looking down at me. Of course I am. It's hard to kill a vampire. He had been truthful, and acknowledged that he was indeed a vampire now. I felt relieved that this was out in the open. But what next, I wondered. Could you turn on the light? I'd like to see your face when I talk to you. He flicked on a light near the bed, and I smiled when I looked into his eyes and handsome face. What a handsome man he is. I bet he had the choice of women then and now, and he chose me. I didn't know if that made me feel better or worse. Ashton sat on the edge of the bed next to me. I turned on my side to face him. What do you want, Dakota? To go to Stanford. I wanted to say to him, but I chose the next best answer. What if that can't be possible? What if that dream can't be realized? Then I want to die. He slanted his head to the side, narrowed his eyes looking at me as if I were a spoiled child who couldn't take no for an answer. Die? You want to die? It's an expression. Don't take that literally, I said, sitting up and pushing the pillow behind my head. I felt lightheaded, and I knew why. I hadn't eaten in hours, or maybe a day. I didn't know when. You look as if you're hungry. You have to eat to keep up your strength. He walked to the door and summoned his servant. Quickly he brought in fruit, bread, and yogurt. Normally I don't eat breakfast. It's not breakfast. It's the middle of the night. I think you lost some time. I can't afford to lose time. My friend Paige is being held by your brother. I reached to him. If she's with him, there's nothing I can do. She must have gone to him freely. What do you mean? You have to help me. You brought me into this, I said, clutching his robe. He glanced at me and said, You were born into this, my love. I tried to protect you and keep you out of this war. By hiring me as your assistant? You must have known my family's history. Reluctantly he admitted, I did know your family's history. I met your father once. He was the one who asked me to protect you from my brother. Yes, I know, in India. I knew that you would someday discover who you are and your powers. Powers to do what? Run and hide from a vampire like your brother. He's bent on possessing me. He gave me a choice. Go with him, or he will take Paige and do God knows what to her. If he has her, you are too late. And I can do nothing to help her. Ashton's voice seemed to rise and fall, aching with pain. Morgan conducts hunting parties once a year on his island off the coast. He invites humans, and they think they're going to hunt animals, when in fact they're the ones being hunted. They're kept there like cattle and used for their blood. And you knew this had been going on, and never did anything to stop them? His eyes lowered as if ashamed that he should have done something. But then he glared at me with bright, severe eyes. It was more important to discover the antidote to the venom in a vampire's fangs. And to discover how I can walk during the day, to be with you. To have you love me. Morgan and the others had been my last consideration. With that discovery, I could prevent him from harming more humans. And while you're experimenting, the world of humans will be tainted and destroyed by an out-of-control vampire. One that you know how to kill, he said to me. I glared up at him. I could never kill my brother, and don't ask me to. I don't know how to kill him either. You expect me to do something you are unwilling to do? The answer is in that book. The one your father sent to your mother, and she gave to you. You know this? You know all about my father's work? Yes. Dr. Overbridge. He was the one who killed my father, and my father's throne went to the eldest, Morgan. Morgan has been looking for you, and I have been guarding you against him. He has this sick fantasy that if he possesses you, it will make up for his abandonment by our mother, in favor of me, and the destruction of our father by your father's hand. He reached for my hair and brought me to him. He smelled my hair. What a lovely face, no makeup. You look much younger now that I've had a chance to look at you. I'm 20 and no thanks to you that I made it. He didn't listen to the harsh and accusatory words coming out of my mouth. He passed his hand across my neck. No blemishes, beautiful. It was as if Ashton was in a trance as he looked down at me. Yes, yes, I know, and it's better to eat you, said the big bad wolf. He came out of his trance when he heard those words and smiled at me. Leaning into me, his lips met mine, and as before, it was magic. The softness of his kiss had me in his trance. I couldn't think or hear any sounds around me. All I felt was the coolness of his hands when they met my breasts, as he passed over my nipples with a light touch, and when his tongue mingled in my mouth and met my warm tongue. He pulled me to him and on top of him where I gazed into his eyes, and my breasts leaned on his hard, hairless chest. He wrapped his hands around my body, and the tingle of his fingers as he slid them down my back shot arousal through me. Trailing one finger along my spine brought about the most stimulating urge. He turned me on my back and braced himself over me. Tell me you love me. You first, I said. My youth showed in those few words. Here Ashton was more than a century-old vampire who had been everywhere and seen it all, and I'm saying something so pathetic, so juvenile. I love you, Dakota. Can't you tell? I wish I could. I want to believe you. How can I convince you? Now? All I want you to do is to make passionate love to me. Make me feel as if this is the first time and the last you will ever love a woman again. In other words, I wanted him to lie to me. With one hand positioned under me, Ashton reached for his manhood and thrust it into my warm, wet opening. Our eyes closed at the same time. I was in a dream. Having a good-looking, handsome man make love to me. He kissed me as he thrust hard into me. Did I hurt you? It's been a long time since I felt your insides. Only a few days, I said as I met his hips, and he pushed into me, and I moaned into his mouth. Is that all? A few days felt like an eternity. I want you every day. Every night. I want you with me. You are sleeping during the day. It doesn't matter. I want you around me. I want to marry you. When he said that, I was biting his lips and I stopped moving and watched at him until he opened his eyes. Do you know what you're saying? How can you marry me? We can be married. It's in our laws. We can marry mortals. It's encouraged in our communities. You have communities. They are closed to the outside world. But I don't want to hide out and away from humans. If I marry you, you will have to exist among them. You do that now. What would be different? He didn't say a word. He didn't answer me as if there was a secret. He wanted me to live among the vampires and not among my kind. That didn't seem rational, especially since my father had killed his father. Just love me for now, he said. We can figure something out later. And I opened my legs and let him into me. Into my body, into my heart, into my soul, all of me. We lay together. Bound together. When I woke, I was lying in his arms. He turned over to me. I like watching you sleep. I wanted to have you all night, but your human body couldn't survive my ravenous desires. I have been without love and sex for 100 years, and you have awakened my body and my cravings for companionship once more. I have a confession, he said. The seriousness of his face made me think that perhaps he had fed on me when I was sleeping, but I knew he would never do something like that without permission. I was once married. And where is she now? Dead. You didn't kill her, did you? Because I could never be with a vampire that could kill? I can't believe I had taken the news of him being a vampire so casually, when only a few weeks ago, I thought something had to be wrong with him. My mother was telling me these fanciful stories about vampires and made me think that she had a stroke or worse, Alzheimer's. At least that's what I thought. But my mother wasn't out of her mind. I may be lying here with a vampire and falling in love with him. I can't lie to you. He stopped, as if to think if he should admit something to me. I have killed, but no more. It was because I gave in to my desire for blood. But I learned to control that, along with my desire for sex. I pulled away from him, and he brought me back into his arms. Don't ever go away from me, he said, his voice soft and strong. My wife died. Of natural causes at the age of 90. She had a good life, but then that was 100 years ago. I wished I had loved her the way I love you. I wished I had met you generations before. I feel that when you die, I will want to die too. Because of you, I will choose a mortal life and die when the time comes, he said, leaning over me. Lying still and looking up at him, I saw the sadness and tenderness in his eyes when he spoke of his wife and me. Anyone else I would have been jealous of, but not that woman. In all that time, did you love anyone else? My phone beeped, and then a text came in. We both glanced at it. I have to respond. I'm looking for a job. But before then I have to find Paige. I've had enough rest, and I hope I can get to her before it's too late. I reached over and picked up my phone. It was Thomas texting me. Found your vampire kit. What do you want me to do with it? Thomas. Bring it to me. Where are you? Ashton's. Okay. Bring money. I hit a button and checked my email. No job offers. Not yet. I glanced at Ashton and said, I have to go. I'm going out to find Paige. I have to know if it's not too late for her. Moving away from him, I stood on the cold marble floor. I rushed to the shower. I had become the queen of the 1-minute shower and stepped out. When I turned, Ashton stood near me naked. I have to go, Ashton. I can't stay here with you. Wait an hour until twilight. I have to go with you. Morgan is too dangerous for you to go find him alone. That's the disadvantage of being a vampire. We humans can move during day and night. I can find her and kill that brother of yours, because I don't intend on being his wife or whatever he wants me for. To have children. That's the key. His children will walk in day and night. And so will mine, but I will treat them as children, and he will not. Is that why you seduced me to give birth to your vampire children? That, and because I love you. I don't want to be without you. I thought, looking at him, he had chosen the wrong human to fall in love with, because having children was the last thought on my mind. I wanted to go to college first. I had dressed, and I knew Ashton wouldn't be able to follow me. I stood looking at him. I don't have any money. I need some money. The way he glanced at me, I thought he would tell me no because he had asked that I don't go. In the drawer you will find all you need. Take what you want. I don't have time to spend it, and I have more. Much more. I opened the drawer, and rows of $500 bills, $100 bills, old and new, some as old as 100 years. I glanced down at the money. It was enough to pay for 4 years at Stanford, maybe more. I'll pay you back. For what? What's mine is yours. I glanced at him with a raised eyebrow. Was this permanent? You know you can't go back to your apartment. You will have to stay with me. I wondered what my mother and father would say. I could hear them now. You're shacking up with a man? No. A vampire. That would really have them over the edge. When I wake, I want you home by sundown, young lady. You sound like my father. I guess you could be my father if you didn't have that young face and body. I grinned. I'm old enough to be your great-great-great-grandfather. Ooh, that's downright disgusting. I leaned over and kissed him. Then I stuffed the hundreds into my purse, and Ashton grabbed me into his arms and glanced at me. "Be careful," he said. I rushed past him and out of the apartment, and out of the building into the daylight. It felt good with the sun peeking through the clouds, streaming a little light on my face. I couldn't imagine what it felt like all these years to never have walked in the sun, gone to a beach with the one you love, or to be in love with someone you want. My feelings for Ashton was indeed love. He had everything I could want in a man if he was a man, but he's a vampire, and I love him just the same.